They told me this is how it all ended. Man, poor Grasshopper.
Yeah, my sister still is counseling to this day over that. I think it was.
Does your family still live in Idaho? Or?
Yeah, my mom's passed away now, but my dad still lives up there. My sister lives up there.
Oh yeah, you were telling me about your mother, and we're not going to make fun of your mom. My mother passed away too, and it's never an easy thing. But you have a funny story about your mom, who was your biggest fan.
Yeah, she didn't want me to go to like law school or something like that. She just wanted me to go hit the comedy circuit, which I would have failed at. I mean, what kind of mom says, no, don't go to school. Go hang out in nightclubs and see if you can make people laugh. And I didn't. And so.
But you made her laugh.
I made her laugh.
Yeah.
My mom wasn't. I'd be there with my friends, and we'd talk to my mom, and I would just tell stories and get her laughing. But she was heavy, and she was a smoker, and so. The combination, then you get her laughing, and she'd turn beet red, and then just start hacking and coughing because of
couldn't catch her breath because of all that.
And my friends are like, "Stop it! You're killing your mom." And, so,
that's a poor mother.
So anyway, no, it was fun entertaining my mom growing up. But she was my biggest champion.
Sure, my mother's. I say this all the time. My mom was my biggest fan, no matter what I did, But the dad, he was straight up. He wasn't gonna blow smoke anywhere. He was gonna tell you if you were jacked up, you were jacked up. But mom was like, "Oh, he's so precious,"
Oh no, my mom let me have it sometimes.
Oh, she did.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I remember once I had this Cookie Monster thermos thing when I was a little kid, and I was goofing off at the dinner table or something, and I was making a mess of things, and she grabbed that Cookie Monster and stabbed it was like a plastic thermos, stabbed him through with a knife, and yeah, she was.
She was mad at the Cookie Monster.
Well, she was mad at me making a mess with the Cookie
Monster. Oh yeah.
And so that was.
So
that
no
was,
more thermos.
That was the end of that Cookie Monster. It wasn't really a thermos. It was kind of like a canteen,
like a jug or something. Yeah.
So, yep. That was swift justice. Let me tell you.
Yeah. When I was growing up, in the we had thermoses that would come in the lunch boxes.
Oh yeah.
But they were glass lined. Mm-hmm. I don't know if anybody remembers that. So if you dropped it, the glass would shatter inside.
Right.
In your drink.
Yeah, it's a pleasant surprise.
That's another thing. See,
glass shards in my Kool-Aid,
Exactly. Your milk sure is a little tart.
Crunchy.
Yeah, that's right. So we still live through it,
Right. Yeah. No,
I don't know how, but.
Well, we lived by what was called the New York Canal. The New York Canal in Idaho doesn't make sense, but big, wide, man-made canal that brought water from the mountains and then out to the farmland. And then there'd be smaller feeder canals going off of that. And so we would, we didn't have anything to entertain ourselves with, and so there was no rec center or anything like that.
Right.
So we had
no
bicycles and building materials. That's what we had. And so we would get like a piece of plywood, cut it into a shape, drill a hole in it, take a rope with a big knot on one end of the rope, and then thread that rope through the hole in the plywood. And then we take it to a bridge, and we tie the other end of the rope to the bridge, and then we'd throw the board into the canal, and then we would jump into the canal and
ride the board.
Right on the board. You pull the handle up with the rope. The rope, we'd have a handle, and stand on the board, holding on to this handle.
Kind of ski it in place.
And yeah, it's like surfing. Well, bridge surfing.
Actually, I bet that was fun though.
Yeah, we called it boogie boarding, bridge surfing.
Idaho boogie boarding.
But then if you fall off, there was a feeder canal just downstream, and you had to swim like crazy so you didn't get sucked into the whirlpool.
Oh, yeah.
To go into the next canal. And so, yeah, if my parents knew what we were doing every day, they would have been fine. And
yeah, they would have been fine.
Out of their hair.
Your dad would have said, well, if the boy gets caught, he gets caught. He's, that's how the dads were back in the day. He puts that paper clip in that outlet one more time. He'll figure it out. If he lives through it. Yeah,
the pain is the best educator.
Oh, so. Yeah, it was for me.
So, anyway, that was the fun part about growing up in that. Just you're free to just go do stuff, and nobody worried about it. And
yeah, no, they did. They really did.
And then once you got into your teenage years, then firearms became part of the mix.
Well, did you get BB guns first?
Oh yeah, we started with the BB guns.
Yeah, shooting each other with BB guns.
Well,
we
no,
did.
we didn't do the BB gun fights. We would have dirt clod wars.
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff.
You could get lucky and really get in trouble. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
We did that too.
Yeah, so we once did. We decided to make crossbows. So, I mean, getting some
Crossbow.
stretchy string, some extra wood, carve it to make it look like a rifle, and then we needed the arrows. And so we had these thistles that grew, long, tall stalks, and then they get dry, and so we'd take these stalks and we'd strip all the leaves off, and they'd be just nice and straight, for the most part.
Yeah.
And then neighbor had chickens. This was before I got into the chickens.
yeah.
So the neighbor had chickens, and so we take the feathers and just glue them or tape them onto the back, thinking, it doesn't matter how we put them on
Exactly.
there. And then we needed an arrowhead, and we didn't have anything to do as an arrowhead. And so my friend says, well, there's these things that we used to put the curtains on the rods, and they're these sharp hooks, that you put through, and they're kind of a weird shape. They're kind of like a strange paperclip, but they have a real sharp point.
Yes.
And so we took those out and we straightened them out, stuck them down the shaft in these weeds, and taped those in place, and that's what we used.
Shoot your neighbor's chickens.
Well, no, we weren't that cruel. I mean, they were our supply of feathers.
I miss.
So it was just having fun with crossbows, and I remember I let my first arrow fly. I don't know where it went. I mean, I didn't see it. I mean, I let it, pulled the thing back and
It worked really good.
I mean, and then I noticed that I felt this throbbing in my calf. That thing, it was crooked. The feathers didn't do their job. It just, as soon as it went
Like a
out, it
boomerang?
went up over my head and came around and just buried itself in my calf. And I looked down, and there's a freaking arrow in my leg.
My God.
My homemade arrow. I shot myself. I mean, how many people are dumb enough to shoot themselves with an arrow?
Well, I'm sure if nowadays, you would think about it, but when you're a kid,
I don't think my parents ever heard about that one.
No, you don't want to tell your parents. My parents got me a bow and arrow for some holiday, and we were staying with my grandmother and grandfather, who didn't have a penny, but my dad was overseas in Vietnam, so we stayed at my grandparents' the year while he was gone. So I got this bow and arrow, and it's got those rubber, the little rubber stoppers on them, and we would take those off. Or I said I was the only one there. And then I would sharpen it on the sidewalk, and I'd shoot up in the air, and it'd come down and stick in Grandpa's roof. Totally seemed logical to me at the time.
Sure.
And I ran in to get him to tell him how look what I did, how great this is, and he was frail and old at that time, and that poor old man had to go up on that roof, get those arrows, and patch his roof. It's just dumb things that boys do. That's why women live longer than men.
Right.
They don't sharpen the arrows and shoot Grandpa's roof with them.
Right. No, it's I remember. Yeah, my dad once told me that the cat was making a fuss. He said, "Go lock that cat in the bathroom." Well, I took that literally. I mean, and I locked the cat in the bathroom. I locked that door, and of course, it's a bathroom door. There's no way to get the lock from the outside, and so my dad had to completely figure out how to dismantle that door and to rescue the cat. I said, "Well, you told me to lock it in there. I mean,
It said just closing the door.
You didn't say shut it in there. You said lock it in there, Dad." So,
I know. And you think back, you're like, how in the world did you ever make it in life?
Right.
Here you are, a very, very successful civil lawyer, and you have this incredible ability to remember dates and times and timelines and the narratives and who said what, who did what. And you think back on your childhood and you wonder how you went from there to here sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Were you always like that, but you just didn't care? Or at some point in your life, you thought, you know what? My noodle's not bad at all. I can use my... I mean, how'd that work out for you?
well, I did well in school when I was a kid.
No, I didn't.
But I was somewhat dyslexic, dysgraphic. I remember I tried to write my E's, and they were all backwards. I had to stay in recess because I couldn't write the E's the right way. It was right in my head, but when on paper, it didn't come out. So I had a little bit of learning disabilities, but you let me play Round the World with flashcards, and that was my game, man.
Really?
Oh, yeah. You know, I could add 4 + 4 like nobody's business. You know?
So you are a math genius.
Oh, well,
Protege.
until we got to Algebra 2. And
Exactly.
then I dived off a cliff at that point.
Yeah. But boy, the flashcards.
Oh, yeah, but you give me some addition, subtraction flashcards when I was 6 years old, and whew,
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was something else.
So well, math doesn't lead into lawyer. You know, I mean, I guess my question is, and I'm not real good at interviewing stuff. My question is, when did you know, I knew I wanted to be a Marine at 8 years old. When did you decide you wanted to be a lawyer? Was it accidentally?
After my junior year of high school, that's when I decided I was going to be a lawyer.
Okay.
So I got started in high school debate because I didn't have, well, we clearly established I didn't have skills at FFA. And so
Yeah, no, the chicken thing.
athletics did not go well for me.
You couldn't be in archery.
No, couldn't do the archery. I washed out of junior high school wrestling. I hyperextended my knee and it was over.
Is that when they had those? I can see you
Oh,
in those
yeah.
onesie
Oh,
with
no,
big
yeah.
ears and an Egyptian haircut.
Oh, yeah.
And how did you lose?
Yeah, nobody wants to grapple with that.
Right.
Like, now, I'll just forfeit. I don't want to.
No,
I
I'm
don't want
not
to get
ready.
in there with that kid.
Yeah, that's an Egyptian for sure.
Oh my goodness! Oh, you just made me realize that. Remember, I did karate.
Oh,
This is
did you?
embarrassing. I did karate in the 9th and 10th grade. You know, so it's the whole white, outfit and the belt and.
Oh, you were cool when you were wearing that, though.
And see, my parents both worked a swing shift when I was growing up. So when I came home from school, they were at work, and they didn't come home from work till 10 o'clock at night. So the whole thing about wasn't raised with
Yeah.
playing catch or anything like that. So athletics was nothing. I didn't have any exposure to that growing up, and so I remember when I got to junior high school, and it's PE, and you got to go to the locker room. That was the first time I'd ever encountered the jock strap.
Oh, yeah. How do you wear that thing?
It was. I didn't have one personally. I was raised in the tighty whitey generation, and so, but it was.
Yeah, the parents weren't about to go buy you a jockstrap if they're
no.
working swing shift.
Right, and they knew my athletic proclivities.
You're
so,
right.
So that's the first time I saw someone, and it was embarrassing because I had never seen one, and I was like, "Dude, what happened to your underwear?"
I've been wearing my underwear all wrong all these years.
And so, but I went to a karate tournament, and I had to wear one. I shouldn't be telling this story. But
Yeah, no, that's. I mean, there's somebody out there that can relate
we
to the
might
story.
get into PG-13, but and you had the protective hard cup. And
Yes, yeah.
I didn't realize that those were made with a sewn-in pouch that had a slit that you could put in. I thought it just kind of held it in place against you. So
it would migrate.
it would migrated, and with the first swift kick that I received during my first karate tournament, it got dislodged.
Dislodged to go down your leg.
Oh, well, and that was the bad part, So I go to do my roundhouse kick in these loose pants, and out goes shooting
Everybody in the
this
stands,
athletic cop. Oh, man.
It's a cup.
I took my opponent out with that projectile. So,
No one wants to touch it and pick it up.
and it just lands on the mat and spins, and everyone's staring at it.
Here's your face mask.
That was terrible.
No, that had to be.
So needless to say, athletics died for me. So I went into debate, and that's when I, figured
Started developing.
Yeah, I could talk.
Yeah.
And I was really shy though, so I just had to make the conscious decision. Okay, I'm going to step out of, my shyness and, because I'm talking to strangers in these
Sure,
debate tournaments.
yeah,
It doesn't matter. So turned it on, and I thought, well, and then I became the, runner-up state champ my junior year, and then state champion in my senior year of high school. And I thought, okay, well, I've got some talent for arguing, so I'll go and be a lawyer. And that's when I decided after my junior year of high school.
Really? And why, doctors choose after they become physicians, they choose, some of them do choose specialties. In the lawyer field, y'all also choose specialties. You become lawyers.
Right.
You pass the bar. So everybody's got the same basic background,
Right.
but then something interests them, and so they go off into corporate law, or they go off into, you know, criminal defense or prosecution. But you went to civil.
Yeah, well, I went to law school thinking that, you know, because I lived in Idaho, got my undergraduate degree from Boise State University. You know, our slogan was
Raw. Oh, hey,
Broncos.
would y'all start these two? Just hit the red button, please. Okay, we're good there. No, it's not red. I'm sorry. It's just a button. And then that one's still doing good, Sam? All right, thanks, guys. I have to do that to line up the
Gotcha.
voice.
The mixing
Yeah.
and all that. Gotcha.
So you went to went to Boise State.
Yep. BSU. That was our slogan, where the BS comes before you. So
Boo. Is it still that slogan?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know. Yeah,
Did you make that up?
That was on the letterhead, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, then I went to Boston to go to law school, and I thought I was going to go back to Idaho
But
and be
why
a prosecutor.
Boston? I mean,
Because they gave me money to go to school there.
that's always a good thing.
Yeah, it was a really good school, and they gave me money to go to school there.
Now you've also got some Harvard training, don't you? Is it
Yeah,
trial?
I did some clinical training at Harvard when I was out there.
Did you do any good at it?
Well, I mean, they had a clinical program where you go.
That's in Boston as well, right?
In Cambridge.
Cambridge,
yeah.
okay.
But in the clinical program was in Dorchester, part of Boston, and so or
Dorchester.
Jamaica Plain. That was where it was, and so I would represent low-income folks in housing court in Boston, and that was my
Wow.
clinical program. And so, but I thought I'd always go back to Idaho and work as a prosecutor. And then I had to start researching jobs, you know, when you're in law school. And then I saw what big law firms paid people. I was like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to try that. Because it was expensive. Even though they paid me to go there, I still was racking up a lot of student debt. So,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and then I just decided to go work for the big firm thing. And I got hired by firms in Texas. I decided to focus on getting a job in Texas.
And that's fairly recent past. I mean, several years ago, you obviously went out on your own, but
I started 21 years ago.
On your own?
No, not on
No,
my own,
no.
But
Okay.
as a lawyer.
Yeah.
So.
And so you actually argued all over the place, all over the states for your firm, did you not?
Actually, yeah. I mean, more so just on my own. I've done that too.
Oh yeah, I know that.
So we go all
You're
over.
pretty much in demand, you know.
I don't know about that.
Rodney was talking about a $600 and $700 an hour lawyer in here the other day. Is that your fund? Is that your firm?
Oh, I can't. I can't stomach the idea of charging people that much money for. I mean, if you do what I do and you've been doing it as long as I do, then yeah, you charge that much. But
Wow.
I can't. I can't justify it. I used to deliver pizzas for a living, so.
Well, you know, and you got the biggest heart in the world too, and you carried me and Melva, my wife, and for now, we're going to try to rectify that situation eventually.
I'll just go inside and go through your couch cushions and find some change.
Get 10 cents.
That's how I earned a living when I was 11 years old. I was a couch cushion server. There's got to be a quarter in here somewhere.
I'll do it. I'll clean your house.
So.
Well, and I do think you're worth every penny that I paid you.
Yeah.
No, that was a little levity there, but no, I think you are in that caliber. Because I've seen you, and it's no secret. I talk you up all the time, but I've seen your talent, and I've seen other people's talent as well recently, and it's just night and day how a person who is not only good at their job but lives their job, and you do. I mean, it's late in the evening today, but you were supposed to do this yesterday.
Right.
Actually, last week I think was
right.
Yeah.
But
life gets in the way, so to speak, for you. I mean, you're always, when I do get to talk to you, you call me at your convenience, which is the way it should be. But it's because you're just leaving your house. Yeah, I mean, leaving your office at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night.
Right.
And you're going to go by. How many times do you go by the drive-in, drive-through? Hey, I'm going to,
right.
wait on, let me order right quick,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So, Yeah, that's my life. You know, we a lot of times late hours just because you have. I mean, you know, kind of what we tell young lawyers when we hire them is like, look, you don't learn to be a lawyer between the hours of 9 to 5.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I didn't know that until I met you. Really, I really didn't. I thought, shoot, a lawyer, that's a great job. You know, a lot of money, and they're out of there. That's not what you were there late at night on my case. A lot.
A lot, yeah, because there was a lot to go through.
Yeah, oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, I remember. You know, there's this one issue because they accused you of using this super secret government database, which was a commercially available database that you know that you just had to pay money to search public records. But they said, oh, you used this database to look up information. It was, you know, privileged government information, which was nonsense. And you said, Dan, I promise you, I just looked that information up on Ellis CAD. Yeah. And you know, it's out there for anyone to see. And I remember thinking, well, yeah, okay, yeah. And, and so I was going through, and they'd imaged all your computers, and so everything that you'd ever kind of, and there I was like 11 o'clock one night in my office going through every little image file on your computer.
Oh my
and
God.
Finding the screenshot of Ellis CAD just like you told me that you'd done. And it's like, here.
You immediately called me.
Yeah, I said, Mike.
You were sorry. Bless your heart. Because you had a little bit of doubt. I mean, you believed me, but I mean, no one could help but have a little bit of doubt. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, because they just brought so much against me.
Well, I mean, heck, they put your mugshot in the Daily Light so many times and said all these terrible things about you. I mean,
so it had to be something.
Well, and if you're going to be a good lawyer, you always have to, you know, not just take everything at face value from your clients and say,
That's
well,
right.
you know, maybe I'm not getting the full story. So you got to reserve judgment to a certain extent. You know, you're an advocate. At the same time, you don't want to be blind to, you know, and then get caught, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
And especially the way you were. I mean, you weren't, you know, and this is not a secret. You stayed in this game knowing that I didn't have any money to do that's just the type of man you are. And me and Melba will be forever grateful to you and to Phil and to Bill and to Amanda for doing that for us. But even though you did, if I would have lied to you, and then because you were going to find out if I was lying to you. I mean, that's just how you do your business, right?
Yeah.
And after you not volunteered your time, you willingly gave me your experience and, you know, your professionalism. And if you would have found that I was lying to you, it would have crushed. It actually would have crushed me. But you'd be all that for nothing.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah, it would have been tough. I mean, we put in probably about 1,000 hours on your cases,
and you're probably on the low end of that.
Yeah, maybe so. But yeah, that night, just having that confirmation, you know, this one little factoid that you told me, I swear I didn't do that. You're like, here's how I found that information out. It was perfectly legitimate. And then, I mean, you had no way of knowing that anyone would ever be able to confirm what you said. And there it was, tucked away in some little data file buried in your hard drive someplace, and I found it.
You found it. Apparently, I did a screen save of that. Yeah. You know, I mean, why did God have me do that? Because I promise you, that was an intervention. I never do that.
Right.
And I didn't know I did it, or I would have said, hey, there's a, you know, on that image is, so there's a lot of things that went in my favor that had to be, you know.
But you had to search for it. And you had to look. I mean, you got to look for the truth sometimes, and the other side wasn't doing that. And I remember, you know, there was this one accusation made against you by this woman who said that you had been stalking her and trying to intimidate her as a witness.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, tell us.
And she gave a very detailed statement to the district attorney's office saying that, you know, on this day at this time, he was driving by my house and, you know,
taking a photo
of her when she was by herself, you know, trying to create this sinister thing that, you know, Mike Jones is out there, you know, stalking this woman at her home, you know, and like I said, she had it this date, this time. And so
very specific on times.
Very specific on times. And so I was going through all the data in this case, and they'd confiscated all your computers.
Yeah.
And what you had done is, if you'd ever, when you were out and about serving papers as the constable, and if you'd ever seen her with this other person that she wasn't married to, and that called into question some of her credibility, you would just snap a photo of it, and then
In public.
in public,
Yeah.
and those were stored on your computer, and so I got access to all those. They actually turned them over, your computers, turned them over to a task force for the Secret Service to try and get you, and they reproduced all this information. So I'd go through every single thing, and I was looking at this one picture, and it was that picture you'd taken of her, but then it was taken on an iPhone, and so you can see all the metadata for that. And so I pull up all the metadata for that, and it shows you where the photo was taken, what time, and it was the exact same time that she put in that statement that said you were across town in front of her house.
Where was that photo taken?
It was in front of her
Boyfriend's house.
her boyfriend's house. And he was in the picture. She was not by herself. You were not at her home. I mean,
Right.
and it just proved. And then that came out in the trial. And because the district attorney's office didn't know that.
Right.
And so
But you had to
held
find
it
it.
back. I held it
Yeah,
back
that's
until we were in trial, and then confronted their chief investigator with that information. I said, "How can you believe her
Yeah.
when you can see right there with metadata that's in your stuff, the stuff that you seized from him,
Your
and
evidence.
took to the Secret Service, and then reproduced back to us? I mean, we didn't have that." And here it is, shows that he was all the way across town. It was nothing like she described. Why do you believe her? And he said, "Well, I think you could get across town in a minute."
Yeah.
From there, and because it was like a minute difference in the two times, and
Like 140 mile an hour in the neighborhood.
Yes,
but,
yes, yeah.
But you could do it.
you could do it, yeah. So, and it was just, I mean, the fact that they would just not own up that this person was lying about you.
And they still haven't done nothing.
No, I mean, there's been no consequence yet.
No consequence yet.
So, but there maybe,
Maybe, the good Lord will see fit,
but that was the one thing I remember after one deposition we had taken, and again we were pointing out serious inconsistencies in these depositions, and Vance Hines, who was in the district attorney's office, he was going after you hard and heavy. After that deposition, he says, "Well, Dan, do you really expect a jury to believe that all these people are lying and Mike Jones is the only one telling the truth?" I said, "That's exactly what I expect a jury to believe.
And
that's what they will believe
Yeah.
when they get to hear all this evidence." That the DA's office was, I don't know, too fixated on going after you, not curious about what the truth really was. It was there. They just didn't care to see it.
I think their tactic, and of course, this is just you want some more water?
No, I'm good.
I think their tactic is obvious to me, is that they planned on starving me out. Even,
Right.
She even said that, her intent was to bankrupt me.
Right.
And then when she found out that you and Mark, you stood up and said, "We're in this to forever," then they had no plan B.
Right. I mean, the whole tactic was, let's go to a grand jury over and over again, get him arrested multiple times, indicted multiple times, make him pay a bunch of bonds, so that financially he cannot continue.
Right.
And he'll have to plead, because that was the objective.
And it would have worked
Oh,
had it not been for you.
well, if you had to go pay a counsel who was competent to really fight
Yes.
back, you couldn't have done it.
Right.
And they were counting on that. And so, I mean, I don't know how many times they came to us and said, "Well, if he'll just resign his office,
Y'all listen to this.
if he'll just resign his office, this all goes away. If he'll plead to something and
They wanted him to
and
be
resign
plead to a
his
felony
office."
too, didn't
Well,
it?
I mean, eventually, but early on, it was like, well, if he'll just resign his office,
Yeah.
resign his peace
We just want
officer
him gone.
commission, we just want him gone. I mean, it was political persecution, pure and simple, because you had taken some very strong, on the right conservative positions that
And even you didn't agree with everything.
I didn't agree with everything you said, but I
Right.
agree with your right to say it.
Right.
And you rubbed the wrong people wrong, and they wanted to go after you, and they thought you were an embarrassment to the county because of those strong conservative
Yeah.
views you had, and they wanted you gone.
Yeah. And they could have won. They could have won and starved me out. I mean, Lord, they did. You know, I mean, you knew how we're still broke. You know, I mean, they got my wife fired. They, you know, I had to sell my dad's vehicle. We had, how many depositions did we have? That each one of them was over $1,000. That your company and you and Amanda and Bill and Phil and everybody had to agree with, you know, I mean, over $100,000. I'm into your firm, you know, for what you guys provided me to do the right thing. And I don't know why y'all did that, but
because it was the right thing to do. I mean, you were being persecuted because of your political positions, not because of anything you'd done wrong.
Right.
And it was, I mean, it was, the irony was they were accusing you of abuse of power when it was them.
yeah.
They were the ones that were abusing.
They were
power.
using taxpayer money,
Yeah.
abusing taxpayer. Tell them about the emails. How much they paid to find.
Oh my goodness! Oh, the county hired, for the district attorney's office hired a forensic expert out of Austin or San Antonio to examine your iPhone, your computers, to try and look for evidence of stuff that they were going to use against you. And I think they paid that firm north of $20,000, and of course, I mean, they had him testify at 2 hearings. Oh, and it was so funny. The first hearing, you remember that one?
Yeah.
The first hearing he's testifying, he's about an expert on iPhones, and because you had this county issued iPhone that ended up getting wiped.
Hold on, folks. What Dan is talking about is they came after me to remove me from office one time. Patrick Wilson was the complainant on that one, and then they dropped it after we went to trial we went to a pre-trial, I guess, a pre-hearing.
We were doing pre-trial motions to dismiss.
Yeah, and so eventually Dan's talking about the first time. They would end up coming after me a second time, and that's when Dan says, "All right, that's the way they want to play. It's game on." But the first time they brought this forensic noodle from Austin, Texas.
Yeah, they flew him up here. They'd paid thousands of dollars to have him talk about your iPhone and how it had been reset to factory conditions. And he was an expert. And I said, well, how many times have you dealt with, a factory condition iPhone and in your work? And he said, 5 or 6, not in your work, just
in your life. In
your life. Oh, probably 5 to 6 times. And would that be like when you would buy a new iPhone of your own and be setting it up, or maybe, iPhone for your daughter or something? Well, yeah, that's it. And it's like, so basically your experience as an expert with iPhones is the equivalent of what a 14-year-old girl has.
Yeah.
And
which 14-year-old girls have a lot of experience.
They do. I mean, I have a 14-year-old daughter, and she knows her way around a smartphone a lot better than I do. So,
which is great.
Yeah, but we could have had her testify for the county, and it would have been a lot cheaper.
So. I mean, we still had to pay her, but it would have been a lot cheaper.
Right.
Yeah. No,
But then she would have told the truth, and that wasn't going to be convenient for them. So.
Yeah. There's so many. You had so many moments in the trial. It was a 2-week trial that we eventually went to, but there were so many epic moments that they would just walk into your trap. Dan's got this. He's got this incredible ability to think 10 steps ahead, which the opponent had the incredible ability not to be able to think at all. And Dan would set a trap. I mean, it was obvious even to a guy like me that can't even spell Jerusalem probably, but I would watch you do this, and you would lead the trap. And it wasn't just for your opponent lawyers. It was the actual witnesses as well, that you were showing the jury how these people were lying.
Right.
And you couldn't get certain things admitted into, the judge wouldn't let you.
Yeah, there was, well, look, we had, because we didn't have the money that the state had to spend.
Right.
We couldn't spend on experts what they were able to spend. And
is it that camera? Is it? Well, just unplug it. Right there by the, yeah. Yep, okay. Sorry, everybody. Let's, I hope I didn't that didn't sidetrack you. But
No. It's like
okay, we're back.
reminded me of a Kurt Vonnegut short story called Harrison Bergeron, where they make loud noises to disrupt people's trains of thought. So anyway,
We'll have to get to the lie. Maybe not tonight, but
oh yeah, I don't know that I'll sing anything in like I did in your trial, but violate some YouTube community standards.
right. Because you know you're going to sound just like the original.
You know, yeah, there was this digital evidence that I didn't have an expert to sponsor that I needed to get in, and it was on these hard drives, and we were going to go show, because they were accusing you of intentionally wiping your computers and reformatting your hard drives.
My personal computers,
Your
2 years
personal
prior.
computers, yes, and this amazing foresight that you had. And what we knew had happened, and we'd had a consultant, Brian Ingram, was very good.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Yeah, Brian did a great job.
Awesome.
But we didn't have money to have him, and we didn't have him designated as an expert in this case, and so. But he had shown us that, the Windows got, the disk got reformatted as part of the Windows 10 upgrade, which was an automatic upgrade, and so. But I couldn't get that in. I had to get it in through their guy, and there was no way I was going to get that in through their guy, and so I knew Vance wanted stuff on, and it was an image of your hard drive. So it's basically a reproduction of your hard drive. And we wanted the entirety of it admitted into evidence, so then I could start pulling up the files. But I didn't have a way to get it in. And Vance had stuff on there, these pictures that they wanted to use against you that were nothing. And Vance Hines wanted that in, and so I was objecting. I was like, no, Vance, you can't get those in. There's And then I said, oh, Vance, but I just remembered that I had agreed once upon a time that you could use this. And
so if you just want to do all of it.
So, Vance, I'm going to have to stand by my word, dang it. You're just going to have to get that in. And Vance was like, okay, well, we'll get that done right after the break. Judge, we've got a deal that we're going to get this admitted into evidence. And then I was like, I've got it in evidence now. Because Vance agreed to let it in evidence. And then I was able to use the.
He about died when he figured it out. But it was several.
It was a couple witnesses later.
Yeah, before he figured it out. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
But you thought about it long time ahead. One of the best ones to me was they wouldn't let you treat one witness as a hostile witness. Do you remember that?
Right. Oh, yeah. No.
And judge says, well, he's not hostile. I mean, he's not hostile yet.
Well, because the state wasn't, the district attorney's office wasn't going to call him as a witness.
Hell no, he's a liar.
Right. So they didn't want me to be able to bring him on as a hostile witness, because if it's a hostile witness,
you can lead them.
I can lead them and kind of force the answers that I need to get.
Right.
But I can't do that if he's my witness. But I had to subpoena him to come testify.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And so he was there at my insistence, which the judge says, well, he's not a hostile witness. And so he wouldn't be forthright in answering the questions. And sometimes you just got to ask a leading question. The judge would not let me do it.
Wouldn't let you do it.
And so then they made this point
that
in their cross-examination. They said, well, just as evidence of how bad Mike Jones is they've got a lawsuit against you, don't you? Yeah. And they've got Mr. Gus as the lawyer against you. And I said, Judge, I think they've just established now that he's an adverse witness. And the judge said, and he had to let me do it. And then boom, we got it.
No, you took him into this. You might have thought it was Vance, but this is how it all came out. Because
I read the transcript.
I read it over and over and over. And you've gone on to other.
Kind of moved on to a few other cases.
Yeah, kind of moved on. What had happened was, you asked the judge to treat this guy as a hostile witness, and he said, because it was your witness, that no, he's not. It hasn't been established that he's hostile yet. And you thought about it for a minute, and then you said, okay. So you started talking to him, and you cross-examined him after they said, who's suing him? And they said, well, Mike and Mel were suing, And so they said, well, and who's the lawyer on that? Right. And they said, well, you are. You said, who's the lawyer on that? Yeah, it's you, Mr. Gus. Judge, that's a hostile. Now we're in a hostile adversary mode, and the judge says, you can go ahead and lead him. Boom, right there it went. And then you just then you were able to get out how deep this really went by leading him, and he's not smart enough to know he was being led anyway.
Well, my favorite moment was in the closing argument, and you remember that
It was emotional.
they had seized your wife's cell phone, and and taken all of her private text messages off that cell phone.
Yeah.
And she had some texting back and forth with another gal that worked in the office that knew what was going on and was friendly to you and to your wife, and they knew that because there was somebody that had been working in the DA's office and suddenly was working in this office
after
with
7
you.
years of working in the DA's office.
And then there was the other person that was making these false allegations that worked down the hall, and so, you felt like you couldn't speak freely. Your wife felt like she couldn't speak freely because, there's eyes watching and ears listening, and you couldn't just, and so your wife and this other coworker would text privately back and forth, and it drove them nuts because there's this person that had come from the DA's office, was now working in the same office as your wife, and she would just sit there.
Yeah.
Sit there and not do her work, and wouldn't be very efficient, and and that rubbed your wife because she's a hard worker. Your wife is, and hey, we're here on the taxpayers' dollar. We owe them a fair day's work for a fair day's wage, kind of
Which
deal.
was kind of on her text,
right?
But
But these people that would lie and not do their jobs and weren't competent. So they'd kind of harp on those people, and some of the messages were kind of catty.
they were private messages.
Yeah, they were private. They
and they were definitely catty.
And there were some choice words used to describe these people, and so, and the whole trial, we said, Judge, that has nothing to do with Mike Jones. That's communications between two other people that were private, and have nothing to do with what's being said about him. And the judge agreed and kept them out the whole trial. And you remember the judge declared that I rested your defense.
Oh my God. Let me tell them what happened. So we didn't know that they were going to have a rebuttal witness that had nothing to do with rebutting any testimony. Right? So when the judge was asking the lawyers, what's going to happen tomorrow, and everybody was kind of under the impression that tomorrow we're going to wrap it up. Right? And so, that's when Vance Hines says, well, we want to bring in this individual. And I don't want to mention any names right now because of might be ongoing litigation. Anyway, so the judge, Vance Hines said somehow or another, he said that we had broached, or that you had...
We opened the door to allowing all these private text messages come into evidence.
Right, but he wanted to bring this rebuttal witness in that had nothing to do with the testimonies, what was she going to rebut, right? And so you told the judge, well, I want to reserve the right to talk to her, talk to this woman because we don't,
Well, we wanted to reserve the right because we hadn't rested our case yet.
Right, you hadn't rested
I said, well,
yet.
Judge, if they're going to go that route, then I want to bring this other witness to testify.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And because
he said you rested. You said, Judge, I didn't rest.
I did not rest. I did not say defense rest.
Yeah. Well, when the jury comes in, either you can tell them you rested or I'll tell them you rested. And son of a bitch, what did he do?
He said, and I said, well, Judge, you're going to have to tell the jury that because I didn't rest. And he says, well, the defense rests. And I was like, and then he turned it back over to the prosecution, and then he let them. After we were done, once the defense rests, we can't bring up more witnesses.
Yeah.
And then he says, okay, well, we're going to introduce now all these text messages to the jury. It's like over 1,000 text messages over a period of months. And he says, and so they had a witness come in and say, we retrieved all these text messages from Mike's wife's phone and didn't talk about them. They just said, here they are.
Yep.
Print it out, put them into evidence, and then just skipped on. And then that was the end of the case. Yeah. And it was like, okay, well, that's a weird way to end the case. And I knew what they were going to do because the prosecution, or in this case, I'd call them the prosecution. Essentially a criminal case.
It was a criminal case, veiled in the secrecy of being civil.
Right. And so they get to do the opening closing argument, and then the defense gets to go, and then the prosecution gets the last word. And so Ann Montgomery called you a dirty cop.
Yep, so did Vance.
And Vance called you that too. And that she did the first closing argument.
Yeah.
Not one word said about these text messages.
I'm gonna read her whole closing before long.
Oh, yeah.